So, hello, thank you for being here with us. We are going to discuss the Gator Task Manager app. My name is Caroline, and I'm here with my teammates Jose and Bilal, and our other teammate is named Yudi. So, first off, I'm going to discuss the roles that we had assigned each other at the beginning of this project. So, Bilal is the product manager, which means that he kind of manages the project overall from like an administrative standpoint, and he communicates with us about what tasks are expected of all of us, kind of coming up on the horizon, and make sure that the project is progressing in the way we want it to. I am the Scrum Master, which means that I document meetings and I schedule our next meetings and make sure that we're on track to meet the goals that Bilal has set. And then our developers are Jose and Yudi, and they have been doing the most work in terms of scouting out what our development will look like and setting up our coding environment. And they'll be doing more related to the code as we progress in the project. So, what our project actually is started with an idea that we wanted to help students, really any students, but especially those with mental health concerns such as ADHD and anxiety, because we feel like these students face a unique challenge where they have to keep up with their schoolwork just like anyone else and keep track of their tasks, but they also have a responsibility to track how their mental health is doing and recognize patterns and make sure that they're staying on top of self-care. So, our proposed solution to this is an application that is aimed at all students, but especially those with mental health challenges by streamlining the location where they track their tasks and track their mood all in one place. Because it has been informed by psychological research that especially students with these other mental health challenges, they benefit from simplifying and streamlining their experiences because this makes them feel like they have a solid ritual to fall back on, and it makes them more likely to do both when they're already opening the app to address one of them.
So I'm going to be going over the languages and tools that we're using and how they benefit our users. To start with, for the front end, we have React Native, which is a UI framework that is used to develop applications for Android, iOS, and web. We're going to be coding in TypeScript for this. And when it came to choosing the UI framework, we really had our users in mind, and that's why we chose React Native. React Native allows us to make our product more accessible and the UI more innate. This feature helps our users that have ADHD or anxiety by providing them with a more familiar UI, as well as a better reminder functionality, which comes from the React Native capabilities. For the backend, we're going to be using Django, which is a Python-based web framework that emphasizes reusability and rapid development. And as a team, we agreed that this was needed for this project. And for the database, we're using MongoDB, which is a document-oriented database.
So in terms of architectural design, when we were thinking about creating an application, we were exploring different architectures, and we decided that for the overall architecture for the overall organization, we'd go more with a monolithic architecture, since this is a single system application. So we have a UI, a service that we're providing, and then we're storing that service's information in a database. So it's all under one cohesive or one continuous system. So we thought a monolithic architecture would be most appropriate for this. And then we also decomposed our application in a very like layered sort of approach. And this was again based on what we had learned in class. So in terms of our layered approach, our UI was like our presentation layer. And then we had a service layer, which was the application layer, which our application was providing. So it was the mood tracker, it was the task manager. We also then had the implementation of this. And then we also were storing all of the information that we were getting from the user. Also on the server organization, the server side architecture, we were following a model view controlled architecture. And this is how we decided for the overall system design or the system's architecture. This was our approach to it. For the product backlog, we used the poker method to assign story points to the various tasks that we had. There was some discussion between our team members as some tasks that we felt were not as important, but other members of the team did feel that they were important. Eventually, we did come to a conclusion on the important, or perhaps an agreement on the importance of it. We then assigned a set priority based on that discussion to our different tasks. And so that was our product backlog, as you can see. Then when it came to the sprint backlog, we wanted to create a proper, or like a proper we wanted to have a proper understanding of how much time would each of our tasks require over the course of the next 2 weeks to get a proper estimation of the effort that we would need to put in. And we realized that the best way to do this is to like divide our tasks into like further subtasks, and then assign the time commitment that would be needed for these subtasks. And our like most important out of all of these like subtasks was the actual main UI, or the main part of our application, was which the user would first interact with. So that's the landing page, the UI. And we felt that that would take the most amount of time, and is also perhaps the most important one in our application. Then we had our different services that we were providing, mainly 2 distinct services, and the time and effort that would be needed for them, as has been mentioned, accordingly. And then you had the overall testing of our application, which is important, but the first is actually the implementation of our services, and then we can keep on testing them. So we've put that out here in the sprint backlog for us to see individually, like what each task would take and require for time commitment.
Thank you, Bilal. So now I'll talk about the risk management plan we have. So given that part of our vision was that the user would have a lot of flexibility to use the app how they want. For example, like users could put only their personal tasks in, or they could put their personal and school tasks in, which requires some flexibility on our part of what input we would allow. But that definitely opens us up to some input security risks. So first of all, we wanted to address cross-site scripting, which is something we all learned about recently in class, so it was fresh in our minds. And we want to prevent this by doing input validation to make sure that there's no malicious scripts being put in that will possibly damage the app. And then we wanted to address cross-site request forgery by making sure that when an HTTP input is put in the app, it'll be read only, to make sure that there are no unforeseen processes that are put in motion, such as changing someone's password or doing a printout of their mental health data that they put in. We wouldn't want that to happen. And then third, we want to use allow listing to make sure that we don't have any injection attacks, especially email header injections. And this will work by basically not allowing any other forms of input that are obviously connected to other applications or malicious files. And finally, just an overall concern that we want to keep in mind every step of the way is that we may be handling sensitive personal health information pertaining to mental health data. And since we're not health professionals, we kind of have a responsibility to not pass ourselves off as such, and make sure that people's data that they put in is protected and could not possibly be viewed by anyone else logging into the app, especially not intentionally. So for that, we're going to use dual authentication to make it really unlikely that the wrong person would log into the app as someone else.
So a quick report of the issues that we are currently facing and our next steps is that we initially did have a tech stack in mind, but we realized that we would need to change it. Jose went over about this part on his side of the on his part of the presentation, and so we just thinking about like how we can migrate or move our current tech stack to the other tech stack that we had earlier mentioned about. We also need to review this security risks that our team was talking about earlier, and how this might perhaps like how we can prevent any further like any future attacks or any future security risks. We were going to go over a product backlog and see how we can start implementing our different functionalities for our application. But in specifically, our next steps first would be to actually implement our UI, then connect it to a backend and database, and then keep on testing our code for security features and just like in general for the implementation. Yeah. Thank you. So that is all from our side.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. That was really good. You guys definitely set a really high